Good evening, everyone. As you heard, today's topic is all about talking about Scope 3 emission, in particular to data center in Indian context and also enterprises. So we all know Scope 3 is about indirect emission that occur in a company's value chain, both upstream and downstream. Emission from suppliers, waste management, business travels, and even the use of products in an organization. For data center and enterprises, managing Scope 3 can be very complex, but is very important. So let me introduce the expert panel here today, who will deep dive into these topics and throw some light for us. So we have Mr. R. Balakrishnan. Mr. R. Balakrishnan, with over 36 years of experience in MEP Design and Engineering, is currently the Vice President of Engineering at L&T. In this role, he leads and oversees the design and delivery of complex and large-scale MEP projects across various sectors, which includes residential, commercial, data center, airports, public spaces, and also infrastructure. Mr. Balakrishnan is also mentor and guide to a team of talented engineers and designers, fostering a culture of innovation and collaboration with his experience. He is very passionate about engineering and design. Mr. Balakrishnan strives to make a positive impact on society and environment through his projects, prioritizing sustainability, which is the topic of today, as a key element in all his project. Welcome to the panel. So we have Mr. V. Jacob. Mr. Jacob is a well-known leader in facility management, project management, CRE critical mission center operations, workplace strategy, property management, asset protection, and corporate administrative services. He possesses extensive subject matter expertise in both the technical and soft services aspect of facility and project management, and has successfully managed various facilities globally. Additionally, he also leads global sourcing and data center operation. Mr. Jacob is deeply passionate about sustainability across all stages of facility management, including data center from design and construction to operation and disposal. Welcome, Mr. Jacob. We have Mr. Vijaya Kumar. He's a distinguished leader and esteemed expert in consultancy sector. As the founder of VPG Consultant, a prominent data center design consultancy from India, he has established a significant presence with a headquarters in Bangalore and a branch office in Mumbai. His key hub for data center design, with a background in electrical engineering and a proven track record of as a technocrat. Vijay Kumar, exceptional experience, spans data center base build site infrastructure, high voltage substation, DC, MEPF fit-outs, solidifying his reputation as a reputed authority in data center field. Welcome, Mr. Vijay Kumar. So getting straight into the topic, my first question to you, Mr. Jacob. As we talk about the topic, Scope 3 emission, if you can elaborate a bit for us on what is Scope 3 emission and also why they are so significant for data center and enterprises, please.
Thank you. I'm so glad that this event organizer has added the sustainability part of one of the discussions. So many technology, infrastructure, your performance, all of the topics have been discussed. How many of you are aware that Scope 1, 2, 3? Oh, anybody knows that? Okay. See, this is the typical situation across the technology world or any of our industry. If I put a Scope 1, 2, 3, you may not be able to understand. How many of you are aware the climate change? Everybody, mostly everybody, right? So each and every activity, either company or individual or any of the operations, that is contributing significant amount of carbon emission, right? Especially India, growing population, economy, and a lot of data demands. It's all, increasing day by day that carbon emission is beyond certain limits. So as a country, you all know that we have committed in 2070 net zero carbon emission. So which means that everyone need to play a part of it. So not just a data center alone, but also every industry should partake this one. Unfortunately, it is like it has become a least priorities given to all the operations. I'm sure that you will agree on that. Except the leads and some of the guys assigned for sustainability, the rest of the folks we are not sure about and what is all about it. All right, coming back to this, why this is scope 3 is important. So before scope 3, that means that scope 1 and 2 are there. So scope 1 and scope 2, it's pretty much easy and simple, like in a data center. Why we are talking about the data center, especially here, is that because data center is very vast, as we heard in the previous panel, vast growing, rapid growing is happening about it. If you are knowing the TROI has released the data, almost 850 million people are accessing internet day and night. So which means like, overall India, 0.9 gigawatt data centers we are operating in India. Imagine the amount of in the emission has been produced over this, though it is not significantly contributing. If I put it in that way, 3 to 5% of total in a global emission, this data center is contributing it. So then now you can understand, what level this emission is very important. So understanding this level of impact on this is very important. Having said that, scope 1 is whatever things you consume directly, that is basically what you burn. And then the scope 2 has become like, what you do indirectly, like what you purchased, what are you doing with your bought energy out of it. The scope 3, anything beyond scope 1 and 2, right? So having said that, this scope 3 is applying to data center plays a major role because this contributes out of 100%. Scope 1 and 2, it's compared to scope 3 is very low. So this is more than 60 to 90% of the total emission. This is scope 3 plays a role. But still we are not aware, and it's still complex. It is very difficult to design, to record it, to count it, to report it. But having said that, we cannot eliminate it. That is the biggest thing in the industry over there. Now, what are things contributing towards? And if I put it in layman language, it comes into like your complete cycle from start to the end. Basically, other than what you buy and burn, or rest all the things, complete value chain of an organization comes into this category. But for example, like, what are you doing? What are things that you purchased, goods and services, your capital goods, your, rest all like energy and fuel activities, what you do across that, and then something else like your distribution of transportation distributions, and then your downstream, if you say that your, whatever the product you made, the processing of the sold goods, and then what are you doing the end of life of the sold goods. So it's end to end, how you are segregating your waste and how you are disposing it, and what kind of energy is taking across that, and what kind of upstream leased or goods that you are purchasing it, what kind of downstream leased goods that you are using it, and what kind of franchises that are being used, and what kind of investment is going on. This is a 15 categories of list, and this bit complex. And so this is something accumulating into contributing to scope 3. But it's a long, it's complex, but we have to solve it. If not now, I'm telling you, we are not going to meet any of our aim of achieving net zero. Everybody talking about it, net zero, decarbonization, everything, and because scope 1 and 2 deals about your renewable energy, so you can buy it and close it up. But whereas the supply chain, the emissions involved in the whole lot of the complex system, it is something that we need to work out. Sorry, lengthy, yeah.
Thank you. So, Mr. Vijay Kumar, when Jacob says it's very important, it's now when we have to act on is, what do you think are the challenges do Indian data center face in tracking and managing scope 3 emission? My next question added to that is, how can they start incorporating scope 3 emissions into their sustainability practices?
Yes, Mamatha. For giving oversight on the challenges. So good evening everybody, and thanks Mr. Jacob. He has given an overview on scope 1 and 3 emissions. So I'm very much excited to be a panelist here to talk about scope 3 emissions. And scope 1 and 2, it lies with the manufacturer and the consumer, and predominantly the scope 3 is the user, the end user. Okay, there are a lot of challenges. So when we come to the scope 3 emissions, because the main challenge lies with the supply chain complexity. See, the supply chain complexity, especially in the data center, so there are variety of materials and the equipments have to be sourced from various suppliers, manufacturers and vendors. And it is very difficult to track the emission levels and collect from the numerous vendors, contractors and the manufacturers and all. And the collating those the parameters, emission parameters, and implementing the technologies to mitigate the carbon footprint reduction is a very challenging task. So then it comes to the technology and expertise. And we don't have a right expertise in many of the industries, and even in data centers I can tell, So because there is a lack of standardization in the knowledge. And the lack of standardization is that there are so many manufacturers and vendors are there, and they are following the different methodologies, and the reporting systems are inconsistent. So when we ask for the data with respect to the emission levels, what they are going to have there in their manufacturing plants, okay, so then we may not get the precise data. So the precise data collection is a challenging task. And in the cost, the investment, okay, the investment is the adoption of the technology. See, adopting the technology and for the data acquisitions and tracking of these emission controls and other things, it is a challenging task. And we have to invest a lot on that. And when we invest on this, the stakeholders and the management will ask us the return on investment. But the return on investment is not immediate visible. So that it is very difficult for the stakeholder to take the decision on the technology and the systems, so that we are lagging in controlling the emissions. And the regulatory policies. And the regulatory policies, in the most of the places, what the earlier panel discussion, just my friends have talked about, the expert, the draft, the regulatory policy should be draft, and it should be user friendly. So if it is not user friendly, okay, let it be stringent, but it should be a user friendly. And also at all levels, it has to be tracked easily, and also we have to support the end user, okay, and it should be eco-friendly and other things, so that we can control the emissions. And regulatory policies also should support the manufacturers and the end users to reduce the carbon footprints. And the last but not it is the least, and the mindset and within the organization, okay, the change management when we impose, when we implement the technologies, and when we implement the green initiatives and other things, our own people will resist that, because because of the workflow and the mindset. So they won't be able to cope up with these kind of the regulatory policies, or it could be a challenging situations for controlling the emissions levels and other things. So these are all the challenges, Mamatha. So these are the present, we are day to day facing the challenges with respect to controlling the scope 3 emissions.
Sure. Thank you for highlighting those challenges. Mr. Balakrishnan, when we talk about there are challenges, what do you think are the metrics or KPIs that we can draw to measure or report these scope 3 emissions?
Yeah. Good evening to one and all. Before I answer what she asked, I think people are telling we'll become net zero by 2070. And here we have been talking since morning. We are trying to increase the megawatt to so many gigawatts or something. So we have two things going on simultaneously. What does net zero mean? Like there won't be any carbon emission by the end of 2070. Okay, that's the meaning. So we have two things. One, we are just increasing the power consumption which might go up to 6% within 2030. At the same time, we try to become net zero carbon. So that is why all this ESG, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 is very important, and everybody should contribute towards this if we have to achieve that by 2070. It's our commitment to the country, and a lot of corporates have already committed we will do this. Okay. Coming to this scope 3 emissions, it's their indirect emissions in any project. So data center being a huge guzzler of power with server racks and other assets like the electrical equipments, the building itself. So what are the measures we can do to know? First, we need to measure what are the carbon outputs out of all these assets, like probably a design life or the building life for a data center. Somebody says 25 years or somebody says 15 years. We could take one value, probably 20 years. And we need to work on measuring from the servers, from the equipments we run, operate, and abroad they are also including the transportation being done by the employees to service these data centers, including trips on flights. All these are being measured, and then we need to arrive at what is the carbon emission going to happen for this project or a data center project towards its life, probably 20 years from. And keeping in mind, your equipments might work only for 10 years, then you'll have to replace some of it. All that needs to be added. That is the first measuring point. The ultimate KPI is how effective is the building or data center building on carbon use effectiveness. I think that's the KPI which is being talked about in the data centers. We need to go towards it. We have not started doing it in any data centers inside India. Probably Europe and US are trying to do this. They've also not done it fully. So I think that should be the KPI for all the data center projects. So having said that, we need also do life cycle analysis of each and individual products, and also do a TCO, which is prevalent, which we are doing in our country as well. Total cost of ownership of anything you're selecting in the data center. Like suppose a transformer, DG, UPS, and even the building materials, the structural steel materials and other things. I think only we do a measurement of all this, of how much carbon comes, then only we can achieve this scope 3 emissions control. I think this is very important. These are the few points I thought I will address.
Thank you. So when we, Mr. Jacob, when we talk, we heard about challenges, KPIs, matrices. So what do you think where we are standing in terms of awareness, understanding, or even implementation of all these scope 3 in today's context?
That's a good question. In fact, that was answered in the first question when I asked that how many of you are aware, right? Scope 3, so 1 or 2 hands were raising up. Honestly, the question should be how we can make it more aware in the industry. So everybody busy in a designing of the technologies and putting right technology, right kind of space, right kind of capabilities, and how to secure it. All those things are there. How we can modernize, how we can make it smart and fast and quick, and bring AI, bring in so many other things. But where is missing out is that what are we going to do with this? This GHG, this called greenhouse gas that basically not only CO2, there are rest all the things also there, like your methane, your CH4 and N2O, and then your hydrochlorocarbon, and then perchlorocarbon, and then SF6, and you have a few other things, nitrogen trifluoride. So there are many other things are involved in this emission. Every component of the server IT equipment, it's emitting it. We are all interested in build and secure the data, but where is missing out? What kind of system that we procure, being a part of And I play most of the roles, like being an engineer involved in design and construction and operation in recent days, like sourcing of it. So I know that where the procurement need to play a role in supply chain and identifying low emitting, low emission equipment, IT systems, IT solutions, all the stuff. There are categories of data centers. So something that you have cloud sourcing, cloud services and hosting applications. That is one type. That is, you don't need to worry about all this built out and set up, supply chain and all this stuff. It's a one input. It comes over there. But whereas some of things that you host in a co-location area, so their co-location service provider will give it to you, and then some of things you want it, and that is where everything comes into the play. Having said that, unless we go through some kind of pain in that area, as being anybody in that case, mostly we are reactive. Most of the cases, we are very reactive until we face the failure. Imagine that tomorrow the global warming is going up 3-4 degree up. Some of the corner up or countries is going submerged in the water. At some of things, eliminating some of the animals, some of the things, everybody getting impacted. Then the whole world talk about that, media will talk about it until everything goes smooth. That we are not interested to do that. And even if it is in this crowd, I'll hardly say that if I observe your mind, hardly 10-15% that what we are talking that you would be listening. Rest all things when will be completed, right? So that's a human, and even if I sit there, and that's what it is. What is going to matter for me? Right? As an engineer, as an every citizen of this country, we are responsible for this carbon emission. If you per capita, everyone close to a ton CO2 annually, we are responsible for that. I'm not sure how many of us that put a conscious effort. That doesn't mean that India is bad off in a whole country. In fact, India does well. In India is the fifth, the topmost countries which will control the positively contribute towards a climate change performance. In the index, if you see, even G20, we top, we are the best countries. And we are now about renewable energy, we generate about 33%. Now, next 1 year, we'll be touching about 40% of renewable energy, and we are the third largest company to produce the renewable energy. So we are good at all those things. Where the scope 3 is a complex one, it is contributing, imagine that 60 to 90% of carbon emission comes from there, and we do not have any idea about it. And including intellectuals, including digital world, including the companies and all of our leaders, except the person, 1 or 2 people leading the sustainability, somebody monitoring energy, somebody building management system. Because that's an alien subject for other things. There are somebody will do it, and as that's a pain area that we need started, or how we can communicate the importance and the result and the negative impact of those not taking care of this area. We need to bring it into awareness of every person who works in the organization, whether working or not working or whatever activity they do. I think they should be known to this. But unfortunately, we are not there. But hopefully, I think now a lot of awareness is happening around, and we are talking about that. I'm glad that this is talking about this. So likewise, every in a conference and the events are happening, they are including this topic as part of the things.
Thank you. Mr. Vijay Kumar, from your experience, what do you think are the methods and processes that can be considered for tracking and managing scope 3 emissions? And also, how do we improvise the performance?
Okay, Mamatha, just I will give you a simple example to implement the scope 3 emissions and control the emissions. So it has to start from ourselves. For example, I tell you, see, in our company, we 3 directors are staying together, in a close by. So we never go by a separate car. See, what we do is, so we go in one single car. Every day we never use the multiple cars. So like that, just I request everybody in the companies, they provide the transportation, or we can use the public transport. All these things, if we start proactively from our side, definitely we can control the scope 3 compliance and control the emission. So this is the one simple thing, just I wanted to convey this to the audience. And it will come from our side only. So when we talk about the methods and process in the industry and the data center especially, so whatever the challenges I have explained, okay, just I wanted to put it in a positive note. See, we have to identify the manufacturer, contractor, and the vendor who respects the scope 3 compliances and the regulatory policies in terms of reducing the carbon footprint. So we have to collaborate with those people and sacrosanctly closely work with them to get all the data of the emissions, what they are producing in their factories to supply to our data centers or our industries or anything. Okay, so that we can have tracking of that method and we can control the scope 3 emissions. And continuously we have to give the training to our vendors and contractors and our co-employees and the workers and the fraternity, so that we can implement so many technological methods to control the carbon footprints and we can comply the scope 3 emissions. And as Sir said, the life cycle assessment, okay, so as a designer, as a consultant for the data center, right from the beginning, right from the scratch, when we do the conceptualization of the data center, so we build these, the green initiatives into those designs. So we have to do the total cost of ownership and the life cycle assessment of each and every equipment. And as far as the resiliency and the redundancy is concerned, so not to dump the equipments in the data center just to mitigate the risk, okay, just to have the security point of view and the data secure point of view. So whatever the customer requirement is there, and to achieve the resiliency and redundancy with a minimum number of equipment, so that we can control the complete scope 1, 2, 3 level of the emissions and other things. And the regular audits, these are the methods, and this is one method of tracking the emissions. So these are the simple methods we can adopt, and the main thing is the automation. So we have to implement the new technological automations into the system, so that we can take the data from the equipments and keep the equipment health and health records and other things, so that we can control the emissions.
Thank you so much. My next question to you, sir. What are the present guidelines or the regulatory which are existing regarding scope 3, and how are they influencing the practices in India?
Yeah, just to put it in one single word, right now it's not compulsory. No regulation demands this to be compulsorily done. But having said that, we have this lead USGBC guidelines for net zero carbon, and we have also recently, 4 months back, IGBC also has released IGBC net zero carbon. I think we need to adopt to that. There is a difference between IGBC net zero carbon and lead net zero carbon. IGBC allows from design stage, and then implementation stage can be done later. Within 3 years, you should get the certification. But again, because it's a nascent document, scope 3 is not much covered in IGBC net zero carbon requirement. But if you want to test yourself really, then you should go for lead USGBC net zero carbon. There, the scope 3 is covered, but that will demand a lot of informations from vendors. As Sir said, you need to demand informations of the carbon emissions from products and everything. All that needs to be documented, and they will give net zero carbon only after the system is in place and in operation. So these are the measures we can take. Having said that, to add to Sir what Mr. Vijay Kumar, what he said, so the platforms of automation has to be increased, or we need to go to a higher platform where carbon reporting also has to be done automatically, and it should be visible to the employees, to the data center owners and to the agencies. I think that's the way to go forward to achieve this mission of net zero carbon.
Sure. So my follow-up question on this. So we say there is no, when you say there is no standard in India, so what are those few lessons which we can learn from the global practices that can be brought in as a practice and then maybe a regulation here?
Yeah. See, globally, what they are doing, I mean, as I said, they are like all the products which are being manufactured. If you even scan the document, scan the equipment, they give a QR code, you will be able to know throughout its life cycle what is the carbon emitted from the product. So that they are measuring. And those are the practices we should adopt here, similar practices. And of course, you need to go for certification from the USGBC lead documentation, I mean, from that agency. Then you will go through this cycle, I mean, how to achieve this net zero carbon in your projects.
Thank you so much. Would you like to add?
I'd like to add a few of the things. See, JCPenney, we source the material from Asia Pacific countries. But in US, we follow sustainability requirements. So few of the things, it is from the boardroom and the shareholders. That's a demand saying that, we have to have this kind of sustainable exercise and every product to be measured and every product to be displayed what is the emission is going to happen. So that way we are forced to do it. There is no regulation as such that you need to do it, but it is a commitment from the board, it's a commitment from the investors stating that we should have it. Similarly, if you take about data center operations, and we are interested to go for a advanced system, next gen system and all the stuff, but we need to give more attention towards what kind of carbon emission is going to come out of it. What kind of cooling system it may require it. As per the ASHRAE standard, it's 23 to 28 or 27. But now there are smarter systems, it can work in more than that. So not just to focus on cost perspective alone, but also in the climate perspective also. If we give attention towards it, because you are the designer, so you are the one day and night working on the servers, maybe front end or back end or whatever the processing area. But if everyone carry this, awareness saying that, hey, there is an element called emission. What kind of emission this each and every component, this is what is happening in the US. When we design a data center, when I visit Columbus and Lenexa, a few of the areas and data centers, very clearly, categorically called out saying that, hey, this is what we want this server to be operating it. It's beyond your computing system, right? As long as the complex is going on computing, similarly, as Sir was mentioning, that one side we want to increase the density of the data, and the other side we are talking about how much we can make it minimize the emission out of it. So unless everyone who are involved is concentrating on the fact of the matter of emission, I don't think that will be one or two people can drive these initiatives. So that's something we can learn from the outside the world, and we can bring it to India.
I just would like to add some more things. We were talking about the MEP equipments, but also on the architectural and structural part. People abroad are going for green cement, green steel, and green certified products for the materials which is being built. I think that is what we need to adopt to achieve this.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, please. Mike?
Yeah, thank you.
Sir, it was a very wonderful session. From the technology point of view, development in future technologies, I think data center cooling will be one of the most difficult problems, because you are trying to increase the speed of computation and number crunching. With high speed number crunching, and more of heat is generated from the processors and all. So That would be one of the major issues. And from the software point of view, one has to write very highly optimized codes to run the applications, whatever it is, so that the time taken to run that code is minimized. So the computer time, again, if computer simulations are and more, again it will add to the heat generation, thereby carbon footprint will increase. So how to tackle these kind of challenges through technology development with new technologies being developed would be one of the major challenges, I think. And where the data center is housed also should be a green building where green energy is used from solar or wind or hydro, so that the heat generated is kept minimum.
Yeah, I'll just answer that, sir. Actually, what is happening, although people talked about 150 kilowatt per rack and all, technology has evolved in that. Actually, they are going for direct liquid cooling, or ultimately they will go for immersion cooling. So direct liquid cooling is being practiced already. What effectively happens is we don't need chillers basically. We'll use only dry coolers and minimum chillers just to cool the hall, just minimum. And they're also working at higher temperatures. So effectively by using this sort of technologies of cooling, your PUE, which is around 1.5 or 1.4 around, actually will drop down to 1.1. So that is one big drop by using these technologies. Although the load is going up, computation is going up, technologies have evolved to reduce or kill the heat at the server level itself. That is what is being used.
Yeah.
So the basic energy for the data center will come down.
Because in every industry, they are trying to reduce testing and increase simulations. So simulations need a lot of computer power. In turn, it will generate a lot of heat. In turn, it will contribute to the
So that's what
sustainability.
these technologies have been developed and it's being used already in India. DLC, direct liquid cooling, has started coming, but future is immersion cooling. Actually, they will dip the server in a coolant, so you don't get the heat or heat is killed there. So that's the technology. So although it's going up, but the power consumptions on the data center will come down. I mean, of other systems, apart from the IT load, like cooling loads, all that will come down.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you for this insightful information. To conclude, I think scope 3 is about coming together, being collaboratively approaching all these indirect emissions. And it's also about strategic approach to bring this transformation is what I would like to say. Thank you so much.